here today to make a stand against the Department of Health, the government, represented by Jeremy Hunt and the Tories and David Cameron. Make a point that their approach and their tact in dealing with the junior contract has been completely unacceptable and unfair on many levels and on many areas. Imposing a strike on any group of workers is a completely dangerous, futile and fruitless and ineffective means of enacting change. It's appalling the effect it's having on morale. And them burying their heads in their sand and marching on with it and ignoring our points entirely is having a disastrous effect on the NHS. And they essentially are setting a precedent. They could do this to any other group of workers in any other public sector, area of the public sector. They're targeting us, they'll target others as well to satisfy their agenda. And I think it's our obligation to stand up to them.
My youngest son is training to be a doctor. He's got another year and a bit to go till he gets his degree. And then he'll be on this 10-year development programme, which they all have to go through. And this new contract that they're forcing on the doctors, people ought to know that they work 56 hours at the moment a week, but that's averaged over 6 months, which means on some weeks, for example, when they're working on A&E, they work 110, 120 hour week. Who wants to be treated by a doctor who's that tired? It's ludicrous. Another point about this new contract, which is unbelievable. At the moment, on the 10-year development programme, they get an increment in their salary every year. The new contract is going to remove that increment for women on maternity leave. So that women on maternity leave are going to lose a year's increment just because they're on maternity leave. I mean, that's back to the days of blatant sex discrimination. It's atrocious.
How about for yourself? How do you think it will affect you?
Well, I mean, I am a female doctor, you might have noticed, and the thing that's really come out in the last week or so is that actually this government and David Cameron in particular was supposed to be campaigning for equality and closing the gender pay gap. There's been documents released this week that put in writing that this contract discriminates against women, but apparently that's okay. We don't think it is. So for me, as a female doctor, I don't think that this contract should be going through.
But if the contracts are scrapped, how will that then affect the NHS if you get what you're striking for, essentially?
Well, I mean, if they were not to impose the contract, then basically if they said, well, we won't impose it, we would return to the negotiating table. We would try and negotiate a contract that is better for patients and doctors and would actually lead to a more sustainable NHS.
What do you think is needed for negotiations to sort of reopen?
So I think with the key with negotiations, I can see you might need to accept some compromise. There may be both sides needing to come back to the table and to accept that, yes, we might need to accept a little bit less pay for working on a Saturday. Fine, not ideal, but fine. But the government also needs to realise that we can't operate Saturday clinics and surgeries unless we have extra nurses, extra porters, extra radiographers. So they need to also realise that what they're attempting to do at the moment is unfair and unsafe. And both sides need to move forward with that.
Do you feel you're getting more support from the public, or are you noticing criticism at all?
Well, judging by the amount of free tea and coffee and biscuits and stuff we've been getting, public support's pretty good. So I'm using that as my yardstick. I think, generally speaking, there's a lot of public love for the NHS, and that's really coming across. A lot of people don't really have all the facts to hand just because there isn't much media coverage of it, and a lot of it is focused on the pay. So we've been doing quite a lot of just trying to educate people that it's not just that there are other issues with this contract that we're taking umbrage with. But we have had the opportunity when we're out on a picket line like today, even though it was a bit soggy, even though it was a bit rainy, people are still willing to talk to us about it. So
what will happen if the contract goes through? So the NHS and your profession and yourself?
So
In terms of the profession, what happens is that we lose vital safeguards that keep us from being worked for multiple unsocial hours, long shifts. It would reduce our pay for unsocial hours, and it would increase the amount of time that social hours exist for. All this adds up to us being overworked and the patients then being seen by doctors who are overworked. We want to avoid this. We want to avoid patients having a service which is essentially 5 days worth of doctors stretched out over 7 days. It's unfeasible.
I think there's a generation of people that is alive today who take the NHS for granted in a country where all healthcare is free at the point of need. And just because I think there's a lot of people that don't remember the days when we don't have an NHS and like I said, take it for granted. If we don't fight now for what we have, then I seriously believe that there won't be an NHS worth fighting for in 10 years' time, and people will miss it when it's gone.